The Houston Rockets have a new lineup that's been killing the NBA. Steven Adams and Alperen Sengün. So Will and our special guests are going to be breaking that down today on the show. So you don't want to miss this episode of the Bradeaux and Will Show.
All right, and welcome back to the episode of the Bradeaux and Will Show. We are joined today by the man, the myth, the legend himself, Mitty Data. Mitty, this is your second time on the show, right?
Second time,
should
baby.
be second time. So, yeah, second, hopefully of many more after this. But
many more.
Mitty's been doing some really cool things with his website, with his content. And then he is like the resident Alperen Sengün expert in our fan group. So we had to make sure we got him on the show when we talked about the double big with Alperen Sengün and Steven Adams. Before we get started, though, Mitty, let us know where the people can find you.
Yes, sir. You can find me on Twitter at MittyData. And then also I have a website called CentersCulture.com. You can find me there as well.
And I'm just quick plug. Once again, I'm not saying this because he's my friend. I'm saying this because it's legit. That website is crazy.
It is.
If you were into stats, data, any of that type of stuff, like you need to be on that site.
Appreciate that.
I'll check that out for him. Let's get into it, man. We are doing the double big today. Brad, Mitty, I guess it was maybe February-ish when they started using double big for the first time, like when they kind of fully committed to it, I would say.
Yeah, I want to say they brought it back out officially. I have the whole log open now. So
let me know.
First time they really brought it back, they ran it against the Mavericks desperately, and it worked. It worked, and they weren't using it consistently after that. But I want to say it was the Indiana Pacers game where they brought it back, and they outscored the Pacers 15-5 with those two on the court. And so Ime said, hold on, let's try this again against the Pelicans. And they worked against the Pelicans, they worked against the Pelicans again. And then boom, the Rockets went on a huge winning streak. Pretty much on the back of this double big lineup.
No, it's been 100% on the double big lineup, honestly.
Yeah. And they're running zone with that lineup, and it's been working. And Mitty is our analytical guy. Usually it's me, but I'll throw in some numbers after Mitty. So Mitty, I'll give it to you. And what have you been seeing with this lineup?
Oh, yeah. So like they first started using it actually the February 8th, I think, against Dallas. It was the funny thing was it was out of desperation. And it actually worked. It was an insane plus minus. After that game, we came back from like 20 points or something like that. Almost cut it close, but couldn't do it. And then we never went back to it again for about like a month, I'd say, until the Pacers game, again out of desperation against the Pacers. And then that was March 4th. And then ever since then, we've used it every day or every game since Alpy and Steven Adams have both played. So we're seeing some good things from there. Numbers wise, I mean, the numbers kind of speak for themselves. At first it was like, okay, like, you know, like I always kind of knew it would work because Alpy plays with bigs. He's played with bigs his whole life. For the Turkish national team, he's played with bigs. There are times where he kind of is a pseudo point forward where he drives in the paint and he looks for a big or a lob threat to pass it to or someone. And he does well with that. With the two guys with Steven Adams and Alperen Sengün in the lineup, that net rating is about 38.4. That's pretty. That's a big net rating. It's one of the best lineups in the NBA. That is a 100th percentile lineup out of 243 possessions. Offense, it is for points per possession. It is 99th percentile. Defense, it is 100th percentile. Also, the offensive rebounding is something that I've never seen before. It is out of this world. We are rebounding one miss out of every two shots. Of our own. So 50% offensive rebound rate, which is absolutely absurd. And I've said this before, the reason why the Rockets win games is because of their defense and because of their ability to rebound the basketball. If it wasn't for our offensive rebounding rate, our offensive rating would not be 16th as it is right now. It would be much lower, like our effective field goal percentage, which is 27th in the NBA. I can talk more about this, but I want to let you guys chime in as well. What do you guys think about it?
Again, they were using it out of desperation, and then it just started working. I want to commend Udoka for going to it full time. Again, Mitty, as you mentioned, Sengun's been playing with bigs his entire life, Turkish national team, and it carried over really well. There's times where they go out there in the zone, it looks shaky, but it's really effective. I don't know if they're running just a straight 2-3. It might be a matchup zone in there, but look at the numbers. They're playing elite defense, as you mentioned, 100th percentile, and offensively, it's in the 99th percentile in points per game. And I looked it up. As a whole, this lineup has played 117 minutes together. That's Sengun and Steven Adams on the court together. They're plus 92 in those 117 minutes. So, yeah, it's a very good lineup. And they're going to be using it in the playoffs. You know, people are questioning, is this going to work in the playoffs? We'll see. It'll probably depend on matchup. But it's something that they're pretty much forced to go to at this point in time. It's very effective. It's won them a bunch of games. Out of every game that they've ran this lineup, I want to say they've ran it maybe 12-ish times. There's only been one time where those two were a negative on the court, and it was against Miami. Luckily, the Rockets ended up winning that game. But outside of that, they've been running teams off the floor. And again, it's a lineup that they're going to have to stick with. Different variations of this lineup that I enjoy. I want to ask you guys about it too. You let me know. Udoka has tried to just full on lean into the Rockets, getting second chance points, getting a ton of rebounds. And that's why the Rockets win games. Look at them. They've always been inefficient, bottom 5 in the league in efficiency. But what's the team good at doing? They're first in rebounding percentage, right? First in rebounding percentage. And when you got Steven Adams on the court, who's right now the best offensive rebounder in NBA history, going off of the percentiles and percentages. Right now, he's getting 22% of the Rockets' misses on offense. That's crazy. But yeah, so you lean into that when he's on the court, and you bring in other guys like Jabari, who's 6'11", Tare, who gets a lot of rebounds. And there was a line where they put out a man with that 4 as well. So they just leaning into getting a bunch of rebounds. Again, that spacing is horrendous. But they're like, hey, we're going to get rebounds. We're going to get stops. And that's all that matters because that's how we're going to beat teams. So that's pretty much what this lineup is telling you. I like the variations Udoka's thrown out there. I'm curious to see what kind of lineups you guys like the most of that group. But that's pretty much what I've been seeing. I like it. Have to keep going to it, and I hope it works in the playoffs. But the numbers have just been elite so far.
Yeah, I'll piggyback everything that's been said. When we first hired Ime Udoka, I think, I'm not 100% sure, but I want to say either in a space or one of the podcasts where we covered the hire, we mentioned how I guess it was his only year in Boston. That year where Ime was the head coach in Boston, how he was very effective in the playoffs with Al Horford and Robert Williams lineups, which is like double big lineups, kind of, I'm not gonna say unconventional per se, but you don't really see too many teams pull out lineups with two bigs like that, right? Now it worked pretty well, I think, because Al Horford does have the ability to space the court, and then for some odd reason, Al Horford is really good at moving his feet. Like he moves his feet so much better than you would think a lot of people his age and his position do, but he does really, really well. And so does Robert Williams comparatively as well. So that line was able to go out there and be effective in the playoffs. And it was one of the biggest reasons why the Celtics were able to go all the way to the NBA finals that year. Right. And so I remember when we hired him, I asked myself, like, okay, are we going to try to see the Rockets kind of institute some of those things? And that's one of the reasons why I did think that they were going to try to pursue a name like Robert Williams, even as, dating back to before last season even started. I thought that was a guy who, when the Celtics traded him to Portland, I'm like, the Rockets might make a swing at this guy, bring him in Houston and kind of try to do give him the backup big option, but also see if he can kind of pair with Alperen Sengün. I thought the same thing at this year's deadline. And obviously we weren't able to get Robert Williams at either deadline. As it just turns out, Steven Adams can do it, right? It wasn't really on my bingo card because I did not think that Steven Adams, he can't really move his feet laterally that much, is why you have to go zone with him. And I thought that was going to be the reasons why it wouldn't work. It just turns out that when you can rebound everything that comes your way, it doesn't matter if you can or cannot move your feet, right? Mitty was right when he said it. He's rebounding 50% of our misses. And it's reaching the point now where I've seen some of our guys on the perimeter, like it's in the shot clock, can't really get something going. We'll just throw it up, right? Because, you throw it up there, you flip a coin, you probably would get the offensive rebound, you get a crack at it again. And when you look at our offense, which has been one of the biggest areas of improvement, I'll say, it's been one of our biggest weaknesses this season, partly because we, cannot really knock down a lot of open shots, and B, we don't have the best, no disrespect to Fred, but we don't have like a Tyrese Halliburton or a Trae Young or a James Harden out there kind of orchestrating the offense. So when you don't have the best spacing and the best floor general in the world, it's kind of not really a shock to me that the offense is more or less up and down. And so when you need to kind of hang your hat on something, you kind of lean fully into the defense that rebounding Mitty was talking about. And that is something that Sengun and Steven Adams have been able to do for us. I also want to give credit to Alperen Sengün, because one of the reasons why I was skeptical of this lineup working, in the offseason and, at first, was because I wasn't aware that Sengun could move his feet as quickly as he's been able to do so this season, right? Or even just going back to last season as well, right? You talk about when Ime first got hired, one of the things he emphasized was making sure that Sengun was able to move his feet quicker and play the level of the screen as opposed to exclusively playing him in drop. And credit to Sengun, right? A lot of people talked about his defense and him not necessarily being a contributor on that end. I kind of feel that's a dated take right now. If you watch the Rockets with how we use him defensively, like if Sengun was the defender that people think he is, the double big would not work. It would get baked, cooked to goods. Mm-hmm. It wouldn't work at all. But because Sengun has stepped up defensively, he's able to move his feet a bit quicker, right? He's not out there like locking up like Tyrese Maxey or John Morant and like that. But he is you can play him level of the screen, right? If there was I can't remember what game it was. Was it De'Aaron Fox? It was one game where we were in playback and I was like screaming like, bro, help somebody go up Sengun. And then Sengun just locked it up by himself. And I'm like,
that was the Kings game. There was a Kings game down the stretch where Sengun was locking up.
Oh no, it was Malik Monk. Malik Monk. That's who it was. I remember
he was locking up that game. Monk. Yeah.
And yes, and I was like, bro, I did not know you had that in your yes. And it was that fourth quarter against the Kings where he just
in Sacramento, right? I think we're to say
that game.
It was that game. He was reminding me. That's that game it was. And I remember I was like, somebody go help Sengun. Oh wait, never mind. He don't need help, right? He did it on his own. So like, credit to Sengun for also stepping up in that department. And the last two things I want to say is, number one, I wish Steven Adams was a bit younger, right? Because we could keep this thing going for the next 2 or 3 seasons. I think there's a possibility where he comes back and it's impactful next season, in the same role. But Steve was 31, I believe. 31 years old, yeah. And he's 31, which isn't that old, but Steven Adams' body is older than 31, if that makes sense, with all the piling up injuries and whatnot. He doesn't move like a guy who, I mean, like if you're 31, that's typically you're like leaving your prime and you will still have like a couple more years to kind of cool off after that. He's kind of in that cooling off stage right now. And with the way the NBA works, like guys don't like, sometimes guys don't just go on a incremental decline. It's usually kind of you're here, next year you're here. It's kind of usually how it works. And so it wouldn't shock me if next season Steven Adams isn't as good just because he's older and injuries probably start piling up. So I wish he was a bit younger because then we could keep this thing going on for a little minute now. I also wish that we had a big who was kind of in the mold of a Steven Adams, or just kind of the opposite archetype of Sengun, because then we could have that guy learn from Steven Adams. And then it would be like when Steven Adams is not here, we can still kind of have this other guy step up and take into that role, kind of that mentorship kind of thing going on, and play next to Sengun in those lineups as well. Maybe Deontay is that, he's not on the active team, but maybe next season he gets called up and he can kind of learn from Steven Adams in practice and whatnot. Who knows? But I do wish we had that. And that kind of takes me to my last point. I kind of open the room back up again. Is I know Mitty wants to see Sengun play the 4 full time. I have been intrigued by the lineups where like they just say go completely into like just forget spacing, forget anything conventional, right? Because conventionally speaking, you wouldn't think this would work. So just forget the conventional. We've seen lineups where it's been, I think it was one line where it's like Jalen, Tari, Bari, Sengun, and Steven Adams. So like there's only one guard on the court, and he's not even a point guard. And then there's 2 wings and 2 bigs. Like that just doesn't sound like it will work in 2025, but he did. And so I guess to open the room back up, let me kind of take over from it. I don't think Steven Adams is a power forward. I'm sorry, let me rephrase. I don't think Alperen Sengün is a power forward. I don't think Steven Adams is either. But I don't think Sengun's a power forward. I think Sengun is a big. I think he's a center. I think that you play basketball in 2025 with at least one guard, and that's a point guard. You need a point guard. Your shooting guard can be a guard or it can be a wing. Your 3 and your 4 preferably are wings, and your 5 is a big. That's how I run. I think you can get away situationally like we do with double big, or you experiment with different lineups. But I think conventionally speaking, that is how you play basketball in 2025. Conventions have been wrong, and I'm open for the Mitty to tell me why that is wrong.
So I mean, when he was first drafted, I guess like his first, second year, third year as well, like I'd agree with you. Like he's a center. He's gonna need to bulk up, he's gonna need to get bigger and be able to actually play drop and be one of those bigs. But then I thought about it. And then he played pretty decent perimeter defense this year. Like he's moving his feet that like ways I've never seen him do. And he's in the Milwaukee game. I see him lock up Giannis Antetokounmpo. I see him lock up Damian Lillard. He has the ability to do that. Obviously, we need more sample size. But the second half of the season, in terms of defense that I've seen from Alperen Sengün, has changed my complete like view of his ability to play defense. He was already decent in terms of like in the beginning of the season, he played decent rim protection. I was like, okay, so he can play like center. He's decent at that. But then he showed me something else where he's just like he's gliding on the perimeter and he's able to like keep up with these people. So like when I look at someone's spot as like a 4 or 5 or 3 or whatever, I look at what they defend. So does he defend 5s? Does he can defend 5s, and like sometimes he struggles if they're a little too big or whatever. Can he defend 4s? Can he defend players on the perimeter as well? I think he can do that. I think that's actually something that I've seen from him that and Ime sees this as well. That's why he got him into this offseason workout that he's been doing, where now he's more of like you can switch everything with Alperen Sengün on the floor. Not fully, but like he's getting there. And then give it another offseason or two. That kid might be something special in terms of like being able to switch everything or guard in the perimeter. And then you get someone that's a rim protector, like a legit like someone of the Rudy Gobert archetype, or even like Kristaps Porzingis. I want to see what that lineup looks like. I'm not saying that that's going to be like the starting lineup, although that's like that'd be kind of cool, right? I do want to see kind of how that looks like though, with like a rim runner, like a lob threat or whatever, and Steven, and what we're doing with Steven Adams, I can get to that later as well. But what we're doing with Steven Adams is absolutely amazing. Those are two. They are supposed to be redundant of each other, but they're not, because they are amazing passers. They are great rebounders both, and they're bigs and they can't shoot. But guess what? Alpi has a little bit of mobility in him, and then Steven Adams is very big, and you can't move him out of the paint. And when you put two high fuel, kind of like big playmakers together, and then a scoring threat with a lot of, and both have a lot of gravity, that opens up the floor for a lot. One thing though, Alpi has to do is be able to develop a 3-point shot. Otherwise, like if he was just going to be like this for the rest of his career, I'd be like, yeah, like we gotta find another solution. Or if we get another big, he has to be like of the Kristaps Porzingis ilk, or has to be someone like Jabari, but can like hit a good amount of his shots. But yeah, I mean, that's what I think we should even look into this offseason, is get a center to pair with him as well, and to learn from Steven Adams. But I'm very optimistic in his ability to play the 4 and play both the 4 and 5. I think he's a mobile big at this point.
Let me ask you a question, man. Let me ask you a question. So with Sengun, since he's been running the double big, right, it's been strictly zone, right? You're speaking in the sense that, hey, we don't need to run zone with Sengun. He's been moving his feet a lot better. There's a scenario we get a rim runner, as you mentioned, like the Gobert archetype. And it works out without running zone. Is that the scenario you're presenting?
Kind of. I think the reason why we run zone so much is also not to tire the players out, because then they're just going to keep.
It's to insulate Steven Adams.
What's up?
Say it again, Will.
I would say I think a lot of the reason why they run zone is to insulate Steven Adams. One, from tiring himself out because of his age, but two, he really can't move his feet.
He can't.
So if you were to ask him to go out there and play level the screen or chase off a screen, like he's incapable of doing that.
I've seen Steven Adams move his feet this season, like very impressively. But yes, it would tire him out, and then he wouldn't be as effective getting the offensive rebounds. So that's what I think. One thing though that I want to point out in the lineup that I've actually noticed that might not match the eye test, but is really interesting for the double big lineups with Alpi and Steve-O. We have a 60% TS like for the lineup, and we're shooting 40.2% from three. So it's and I've always said this, it's more of an offensive lineup than a defensive lineup because we get so many offensive rebounds. But not only are we making our shots, we're getting the rebounds. And also the player that actually benefits the most from this on offense is Jalen Green. I'm looking at his offensive DPM right now compared to everyone else. He is a plus 1.4. The only one that's closest to Jalen in terms of that is Almond with a plus 0.8 offensive DPM.
Mitty, real quick, for the people who listen, a lot of people don't understand what that means. So go ahead and explain that as well.
Okay,
DPM.
So DPM is like an adjusted plus minus. It essentially tracks how well you are in terms of impact on the offensive side of the court. That's offensive DPM, and then defensive DPM tracks how impactful you are on the defensive side. The way you calculate is very difficult. It goes into a lot of linear algebra and everything, but it's proven. It's basically like an all-in-one metric, similar to EPM, BPM, or RAPM, but like it's an all-in-one metric that tracks how well you are on offense or defense, how impactful you are. So not necessarily just efficiency, but how impactful you are in terms of that, in terms of offense or defense. So Jalen is plus 1.4, and then Ahmed is plus 0.8. So Jalen actually benefits the most from this, and he shares the floor 63% of the time when this lineup is out there. So we get a lot of offensive rebounds. We get 50% of the offensive rebounds, but we shoot well with the lineup, which is funny enough.
Let me respond to some things Mitty said. I think we're actually a lot closer than I thought we were going to be when you said what you said earlier. So I think we're like almost like pretty much on the same page. I think that we should absolutely, like, if I got to design a player we drafted this year, it is absolutely a big who can rim protect and catch lobs, right? And be a glass cleaning demon. Like that would be, if I could design a player to draft this year, that's what we target, because we have a lot of guards, right? We have Amin, we have Reed, we have Jalen. We have a lot of wings. We have Bar, we have Tari. We have Cam's still here for now, more or less, right? Dylan's here, right? I didn't include Fred in the guard lineup. We have a lot of guys in those departments. The one area that we are very thin in, particularly in our young core, is the front court, the center position. Like I said, it is a bit more difficult because there's two guard spots, there's two wing spots. You kind of play maybe three wings. You really can only play one, maybe two, big. So I get why it's a bit thinner there. But we don't have as much depth there, right? So if I could design a player to draft this year, it would be a big, and it would be hopefully somebody who could share the court with Sengun, right? Whether that's with court spacing or with him just being like I said, a demon on the glass and catching lobs. I think Sengun, that's one aspect of the Steven Adams and Sengun pairing that we haven't really seen. I would love to see Sengun as the pick and roll ball handler with a screen being set for him, because I think that dude can, like, off the roll, bro. Honestly, what do you do in that scenario? Even you want to invert it with like a min, right? Like, what do you do in that scenario, right? Where you have Sengun going downhill and another, like, a real lob that also going to shoot at the same time downhill, and Sengun can make that pass over the top. You know what I'm saying? So, like, I would love to see that. And what I would love to see us do is, like I said, have that backup big, right? So now we have Sengun as our starting big. You have a backup big as well. But what I would love to see is there are times, especially like if our offense stagnates, where you can say, hey, look, let's just go ahead and throw in the double big lineup, throw in Sengun's other guy, and let those guys go out there. And like I said, even if the offense is you're not making shots, it is what it is. You know, there's a pretty good chance that you're going to get that offensive rebound, and it's a lot easier to put up points when you have two chances per possession to score, or maybe even more at that point, honestly, right? So that's kind of where I'm at with it. I think that the reason why I would not start Sengun at the 4, and then to Mitty's credit, right? Your position more or less these days is just who you guard. And Sengun doesn't necessarily always guard 5s these days. As a matter of fact, we started the season pretty much exclusively on the non-shooter of opposing teams starting 5. So like he would guard like the Terrence Manns and the what's the buddy on Ryan Dunn. I'm thinking of what's the dude who used to play for the Timberwolves. He plays for the Clippers now as a guard, but kind of plays
Chris Dunn.
What is his name?
Am I blanking?
Chris Dunn. Yes, yeah, that's what I was thinking. He guards guys like that. Start the season right now. It's been a bit different recently, but that's how we started the season. He was guarding the worst shooter on the starting 5, and he would kind of roam a bit, which he was good at, and then we would have Jabari be the 5. I guess you would say he would guard the big, and that's a sort of conversation for another day. But I've been saying for a while now, I think that Jabari should go ahead and just kind of lean into being more of a big than a wing than what he is right now. That's a separate conversation for a separate day. But to Mitty's point, yes, that is correct. But the reason why I would not have him start there and like finish games there, and like obviously like if the lineup's killing it, you go with the best 5 in the game, right? But the reason why I would not start him there is I do think that while he has improved as a perimeter defender, like I said, there's a lot of clues. I think his like as far as bigs go, I'd say he's really good at that. I think still when you compare it to like wings, I would still say he's not there yet. Maybe, and he may not get there. That's okay because like that's not really going to be his role in my eyes, right? That would be like asking, I'd be like asking Jalen to rim protect, right? Like that's just not his role. That's not what he's supposed to do. So it doesn't bother me that he's not the best at it. But I don't think he's going to be the best at that. And I think that you will in this NBA where everything is more or less mismatch hunting and switching, right? You can kind of insulate one big. I think insulating 2 full time is going to be pretty difficult. Now we do have like the Amens and the Taris of the world who are just out of this world defensively, have the long wingspans to kind of make up for that. But I think asking to do that for like a full 7-game series, especially against like let's say like a Luka Doncic or a Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, right? Because that's the competition right now. We got to be able to beat those guys, right? I think it will be really difficult to do that for a full 7-game series against guys like that who are going to mismatch on us and pick on us to death. And then offensively, right? Like I do think that the reason it works so well is because you are getting every offensive rebound. But I want to be able to at some point in time be able to say we can space the court and shoot threes. And I do think like to Mitty's point, and this is where I agree with him here is I'm kind of working under the assumption I think Sengun's going to improve as a shooter. I don't think he's ever going to be a great one, which once again, not a problem to me. I think he can still be one of the best players in our league without necessarily being a great shooter. Because like I said, I don't think that's going to be his role. To me, that's like the same thing as asking Jalen to be a rim protector. I don't think that's what's going to be in his cards. I do think he can get to a point in time where he is respectable though. But I do think that even if he gets to that respectable point, we talk about all the time how spacing is not your 3-point percentage. It's how defenses respect you. And I think especially with how much of a rim pressure demon he's going to be, I think defenses will be okay with Sengun shooting 5 threes a night if that's what it came down to. I think they would much rather him shoot those than for him to get downhill or get in the post. And unless it's like a Kel'el Ware, right, or like another big out there, like honestly, I wish we would have traded up for Kel'el Ware because he's more or less exactly what we need right now. Oh my goodness, if we had Kel'el Ware on this team. Yeah. But yeah, like because he right now he's rebounding, he's catching lobs, and he's shooting. So unless your other big is like that, I do think you'll suffer from some spacing concerns. To shout out Jesus Supremacy Isaiah, he's kind of in the whole. It doesn't matter if you just have a bunch of rim pressure demons, and I guess he's correct on that. So maybe if a man in Sengun and maybe the big we get, they're just so dominant around the rim, it won't matter. But that is asking. I think it's asking for a lot. I think it's a bit easier said than done. So, as kind of with what I realistically project from this team, I think that the double big, it should be a healthy part of what we do. Do not get me wrong. but I don't think it should be the default. I think it should be, this is a lineup that we go to, and if it works, keep it in there, right? Close games with it, that's fine. But I don't think it should be the starting five.
I think
that makes sense.
What's up, Brad?
I was gonna say I agree with Will. I'm gonna let you speak, then I'll go.
Yeah, okay. I think we're actually a lot closer than I initially thought as well. Because making it a default lineup means that this lineup works against almost anything. Like almost anything. Like for example, the double big with Alpi and Steven, I don't think would work well against the Warriors. That they would shred us to pieces. They would kill us.
Not at all.
So yeah,
too much.
But if you, the thing that I'm saying is that, and it should be like the Steven Adams and Alpi lineup should be something as a good lineup to go to when the matchup depends on it, and you can win that matchup, and then that's going to give you an advantage, or that nothing has been working, and so let's go to it. What I'm saying is, if you get the perfect big to pair with Alpi, where he plays the 4 and the 5, but like both Alpi and the big can essentially like play switch defense, and also both are mobile enough, and one of them can shoot threes. I think that I would be less hesitant to make that like a default lineup. Like obviously you can't just go and like go get Kai Jones and then be like, okay, yeah, like it works. Like you gotta find the perfect big. In this case, Kello could have been like really, really good, but we don't know what the future holds. But I'm just glad that Ime has seen this, and we're trying something new. Just like Will Hardy said, credit to their staff for convincing him how to just to play zones and try it. And now we got a new look, and it gives us another chess piece in our match for the playoffs.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead. Before you go, Brad, I just want
go ahead.
30 seconds. To their credit, right? If you've been in playback, I have been very critical of our zone. Brad touched on earlier. I don't even know if it's 2 or 3, if it's a matchup. I don't know what they're in, right? To their credit, last night against the Jazz, it is the Jazz. It looked a lot better. Like that, to me, that's the best it's been since we started running it, in my opinion. I had less moments where I'm like, get out, or switch there. As a matter of fact, I saw a possession. I wish I remembered who it was, but I saw a possession where we pill switched, and I almost shed a tear. And I'm like, we don't ever do that. So I was like, to me, it's the best that zone has looked since we started running it, and I want to give them their credit. Maybe the reason they have been running it as much too is just so they can go ahead and like hammer out the ugly parts of it, so it'll be ready to deploy, like, you know, an ironed out version of it in the playoffs. And that's why they've been running as much lately, because when you look at where it was when we started doing it and where it is now, to me, I think it's a lot better now than what it was.
Yeah, I wanted to jump in a few points that you guys had mentioned. I liked what Will said, and then I want to get to what Mitty said as well about, you know, running this in the future. So yeah, Alperen Sengün is a pick and roll ball handler. I do like that a lot. It's not the best with this lineup. Again, there's no one for him to really throw it over the top to. You guys can answer this question for me. Y'all go ahead and do it. Who's the last time y'all seen Sengun throw an alley-oop to on a pick and roll?
Probably. It's not a man, is it?
Outside of a man.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say I thought he threw one.
They don't run it as much as they should.
Okay, so
but outside of a man,
so it was with KJ.
KJ, right? I think it could be a lot more consistent, in my personal opinion. I do like it when he runs the inverted pick and roll with Fred VanVleet. Shout out to our guy DeAndre. He's in the playback spaces with us. He said Sengun had a really good points per possession on being a pick and roll ball handler. So I'd like to see that a lot more. Whether it's a guard or a big man who can catch lobs, I'd like to see it. And this goes into what I was going to say from your point, Mitty. You know, running this in the future, maybe they need a guy like Khalil Ware would have been nice. But how about I haven't watched a lot of college hoops, and Will and I will get in some draft guys as we do every offseason, especially since we make it the top 10 pick this year with that Suns pick. A guy like Kaman Maluwat.
Yep.
I don't know if that's how you pronounce that brother's name, but I do know he can hoop. He's 7'2", he's athletic. I want to say he's got some touch. That'd be a potential first-round pick that I would go with. And if you bring back Steve-O, you know Steve-O's not playing 80 games. He's not playing 60 games. But damn, you bring in a rookie who can take some of those minutes in gel. I would be interested in doing something like that. So
100%. And real quick, honestly, a lot of respect goes to Steve-O. Like, you get any other big that has his foot speed and mobility, it has no way of working with Alperen Sengün. But Steve-O is so gifted as a passer, as a rebounder. he has gravity that isn't even connected to any sort of scoring. It's literally just rebounding and positioning. That it works this well. It's mad respect to him. Like I've never been more impressed than like watching Steven Adams play on the court. I'm at games and then he's subbing in. I'm clapping. I'm giving him applause. He's leaving the game. I'm giving him applause because man, that guy is special. I just had to say that.
Yeah, no, and I wanted to bring up a point that you just mentioned. His passing is a huge reason that lineup works a lot as well. You know, they'll give Steve the ball at the top of the key, and he's a really good entry passer. I want to say, what's that on his face? He might be the best entry passer on the team. But a lot of times the Rockets, when they run this double big lineup, when they're doing that entry pass, they have a huge mismatch down low, and most of the time the defense just pulls to the guy to the ground before they even get the ball in the post, and they get teams in foul trouble very quickly. It's just a very intriguing lineup. I just wanted to compliment Steve for his passing ability, and it's a huge reason why the lineup works. He is the main reason why the double big works.
No, he's the reason it works. I want to jump in on that.
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say one last thing, and it could parlay into what you were saying, but I'd like to see this, double big work outside of just Sengun and Steve. We've only seen it with those two. We have not seen it with another big. Jock Lando probably isn't the ideal big to run a double big with. Shout out to Jock, who's been hooping.
It can maybe work.
It could. Shout out Kangaroo Deuce, but we'll see if it works. I don't know, but I want to see it work with another big. But yeah.
I was gonna say to talk about Steven Adams, the thing it's the entry passes, and then he is for some reason really good at hitting like cutters. Like we'll see him run the play that Jalen and Sengun probably needs to run it a lot more. But the play where Jalen kind of fake the decks and then go for the cut, Steven Adams has hit him on a couple times in that. And even if it doesn't necessarily connect, you see the thought process of him trying to get the ball to Jalen or any other cutters in that scenario. I think he's also pretty good when it comes to the dribble handoff, stuff like that. Obviously, we know what he does as a screener. But I think a lot of people don't really talk about what he does as a playmaker and as a passer for this team. And then last but not least, I want to say credit to Rafael Stone for getting him last trade deadline. I remember we got him. I like the idea. I didn't love it because I didn't know how much Steven Adams had left in the tank, right? Because he's coming off of 2 season-ending surgeries, I believe that's what it was. So it's like he's come off, season-ending surgeries in his knees. He's getting up there in age. I don't know how much basketball he has left. And to be fair, when the season started, he was playing, but it was very much a ramp-up process for him. And now he was playing like 12-minute intervals. Now I think he played 25 minutes. I forgot what game it was, but it was one of the games recently where he played like 25 minutes. So credit to Stone for seeing the vision there. I think that obviously we're at 48 wins right now. We're on pace to win. I'm not gonna say a number because I'll jinx it, but we're on pace to win a decent amount of games. We're gonna make the playoffs this year, right? We're probably gonna have home court advantage, and I can say unequivocally that does not happen if we don't have Steven Adams, particularly recently, like when this offense has really struggled. What game was it? It might have been Denver. When we lost at Denver, I was like, put Steven Adams in the game. Like put him in the game. Nothing else is working. Let's just go ahead and abandon everything else. Put Steven Adams in the game and let him try to bring us home. So yeah, like credit to him for that. Credit to Stone for seeing that vision. Like I said, my only regret is he's not younger. I wish he was like a year or two younger and we could have had him for another year or two after this season. But yeah, I think that's all I have to say about it. Mitty, you have anything else to add?
I think that's it. I think the thing that impresses me most that I've seen just analytically with the double big lineup, like I'll just say it again, is Jalen Green and how well he plays with it. A lot of his game relies on being able to go to the paint and score, but people would think, you clog the paint with those two, Alpy and Steven Adams, but he's very efficient. He's been playing really well with that lineup. So it's a good side to see for me. That's the only thing I'd say.
Yeah. Last thing I'll say, and it's on the exact same point. I'd like to see this lineup primarily used with Jalen Green, Tari, and Jabari. Those 5 right there. Again, you got 4 bigs out there, and then Jalen kind of running the show. That's when I saw it look its best. It's only been ran for 2 minutes now, but it was a +8, and it was against. I had it pulled up. I left it, but that lineup is solid. Again, a +8 in 2 minutes. They got to go back to that. That's just me personally. That's the last thing I had to say. We'll see if it.
I want to say something, but it is not related to double big. I want to throw it in to this podcast and not the one we're going to do after this one, because this one's went a bit longer, which is a good thing than I thought it would. I just want to say, man, because I was going through my feelings today earlier. So I don't know if you saw it, Mitty, where I was thinking, I'm like, man, this might be the last season.
I saw you tweet this. Houston.
Yeah. And I'm like, dude, I don't want to let him go, man. Like, I know that to get Kevin Durant, I think we're all on the same page here. I think most of us would be fine. Would welcome a Kevin Durant trade.
I'll say this really quick. Funny enough, I put a poll up, and it's like 70% of fans do not want KD in Houston. Maybe they don't understand what the package is.
I think that the disconnect is the price. Yeah, I don't think he's going to cost as much as people think he will. And I mean, to be fair, I wasn't enthralled with Kevin Durant until Isaiah kind of convinced me on it, anyways. But yeah, I am in on KD. Very much price dependent, of course. But to make that happen from a financial standpoint, it will require one of Jalen, Sengun, Dillon Brooks, or Fred's contracts. And I'm not trading Jalen and Sengun for 37-year-old Kevin Durant. And if I had to guess, I think the front office would value what Fred brings a bit more, especially considering we don't have as much of what Fred does. We have a lot of wings. And we're trading for another wing in this hypothetical. So I think they would probably prefer to keep Fred and keep the point guard over Dillon Brooks, the wing. So I think Dillon Brooks is the one who gets traded here. And man, I'm just not looking forward to that day, man. It's crazy because the way we started the season before last 2023 summer, y'all know I did not want Dillon Brooks at all. Like I wouldn't have given him.
I was trying to convince you too. I was trying.
Yeah, no, did not want, because he's coming off of that series in 2022 where he sold against the Warriors. He's the sole reason they lost that series. And then 2023 where he wasn't the sole reason that they lost to the Lakers, but he didn't really help. He ran his mouth and kind of didn't stand on business when it came back. Yeah, so and then he got kicked off the team. So I'm like, man, he can't really shoot. I don't want that guy on my team. But I was wrong. I've never been like, I think this is the biggest miss I've had in recent Rockets time with my takes, and I'm so glad I was wrong about it. Like, never be afraid to be wrong, or don't get too high on your opinions that you can't change them or be wrong on. I'm so glad I was wrong about Dillon Brooks. So much so, like I said, now he's went from a player who I wouldn't want on this team at all to like, bro, I'm gonna be sad when the notification comes through and it says he's been traded. Like it's gonna make me sad. And the reason why is because number one, he is like very quietly, like the NBA world has not given Dillon Brooks enough love. It's kind of just been every time he gets into a fight, he'll get on ESPN for that. But he's been quietly playing really good basketball recently. He's turned himself into one of the better role players. I know his rebounding isn't the best, and that's kind of one of the things we need more than anything right now is rebounding. But outside of that, dude, his defense isn't where it was in Memphis. I think it's because of his increased offensive role in Houston. So I think if you kind of scaled that back and asked him to focus more on defense, I think his defense could be a bit better. But he's still a solid defender, right? And obviously, if he's in your lineup, right, the ideal version of him is like your third best defender with like a Tari and a Min out there. And I think like if Dillon is your third best defender, I mean, there's a lot about your defense. So he's still a pretty good defender. He's shooting his best mark from three, I believe, 39% this season on like 6 attempts, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, bro. Like that's really, he's the best shooter on the team. If there was anybody who I was like, I need them to hit a catch and shoot three, I don't know what the numbers say. I'm picking Dillon Brooks. I believe it's got to the point now where Dillon Brooks is open, his feet is squared up, and he can like shoot it with, without having to worry about a contest. I think it's going in now. Like, I believe in Dillon Brooks as a shooter now, which is not something I would have said about him 2 years ago. And then just the culture he has brought to this team. It was when we were playing. Bro, why am I drawing a blank now, bro? What was the game before the Jazz?
I'm drawing a blank as well.
The Hawks?
It was Atlanta.
Was it? What? No, because was it Atlanta the game I'm thinking of? Hold on.
With Dillon Brooks?
Let me look it up. No, it was the Hawks. Yes, it was the Hawks, right? It was the Hawks game. And when Sengun had got into it with Georges Niang and he was talking, man, Dillon Brooks over there clapping like a proud father. And like it's a meme now. People laugh at it. But to me, that means a lot because that's the culture he brought here. Like we do not have this grit and grind. Like we don't back down to nobody without Ime, without Dillon. And when you see, I look back to like the moment last season where DeMar DeRozan hip checked Jalen after Jalen blocked the shot. DeMar came back and hip checked and put him on the ground, set him down. Right? Who was the first person to go walk up to DeMar and be like, "Bro, don't do that"?
Dillon Brooks.
It was Dillon. Dillon was in there. It was 3 Bulls and Dillon Brooks by himself standing on business. And like, I love that, man. I love when players like go out there and have that edge and that competitiveness. And I think that has directly rubbed off on the rest of our young players. I think that the grit that Tari and Bari and the men play with, I think a lot of that comes from Dillon. I think that part of Alp's development defensively, I think 100%. It comes from Dillon. I go to the games all the time. I say it all the time. I hear Dillon screaming every possession on defense. Get out, Alp. Get out, Alp. Right here. He's open. Boom, boom, cut. Whatever. Like, I hear him on defense quarterbacking it all the time. And it's like, I don't think we have the defensive improvements that we've seen from these guys without Dillon. And so like, I think he's done his job in terms of establishing the culture. I think it can thrive even without him being here. But man, it's going to hurt to see him go. I didn't even mention his contract. He's on I hated the contract at the time. I love it now. He's on a front-loaded contract. I think by the definition of it, it's team friendly.
Like 4 years,
it's very reasonable for what his role. Yeah, and like I said, it's going down. He's making less money next year. And like, I think his role is scalable. I think he can play 35 minutes. He can play 25 minutes. He can be impactful. And both I think he can start, he can come off the bench, whatever. I love Dillon Brooks, man. Like, if by some odd reason he is not on does not get traded this summer, I got a bunch of jerseys on my wall. I'm buying Dillon Brooks jersey. Like, game 1 next year, I'm going to Toyota Center. I'm getting his jersey because I love everything 100%. Dillon Brooks has done for this team. I think he's super underappreciated, and it makes me really sad. I think he might get traded, man.
We may need to have a Dillon Brooks episode in the off seasons because I 100% agree. Dude. It would suck to lose him. Like, huge for the culture. Again, best catch and shoot player on the team. And the only player you can really lose him for is a guy like KD who can just shoot lights out. Because again, it's hard to lose a shooter who's developed into the shooter that he's been. Culture wise too, like, I love Dillon Brooks. So it would be tough. I do agree. Out of that, those 4 players, you could argue Fred. I understand if the Rockets are ready to move on from Fred, if Amin's ready for that point guard role. Just looking from the Rockets front office standpoint, yeah, I don't know if they do that. But again,
couldn't you aggregate though? Couldn't you aggregate a bunch of contracts?
You could definitely aggregate a bunch of contracts, but you'll probably.
I don't think we financially have enough to reach KD's, especially with the CBA rules. I don't think we could because KD's making about $50 million. I think it would work for guys.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe I'm not gonna say that because people will get mad at me in the comments. So, but yeah, I don't think it's possible without some like real finessing.
I got you.
I was gonna say this to finish because I do want to do an episode on this. Shout out to Dillon though. When we do clinch a playoff spot very soon, he's gonna get an extra $1 million. That's an incentive on his contract. That every time the Rockets make the playoffs, he gets an extra $1 million. So shout out to him.
Well deserved because he's a big reason why.
Yeah, he's gonna be getting that $1 million very soon. So shout out to him. But
shout out DB.
Y'all have anything else that y'all wanted to add? I really enjoyed this episode.
I'm tapped out.
Enjoyed it.
All right, Will and I are gonna hop on an episode very soon after this one. We're gonna drop this one. Appreciate y'all tapping in with us as always, and thank you for watching the Bradeaux Show. Oh, and before we close, actually, I gotta give a shout out to Mitty for coming on the show, man. So one more time, plug your stuff again.
You can find me on Twitter at MittyData, and then obviously my website CentersCulture.com. Updates coming soon. Have something in the works.
Yes, and last thing, I want to give a big shout out to Mitty again. He always taps in with us on playback. He's watching every single game.
It's the crew.
Huge part of why it's a huge success for us, and it's very fun to watch every single game. So thank you again, and for everyone listening, appreciate you guys. And that was an episode of the Bradeaux Show.